Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're going to take a look at another comparison video between the OLED and the original LCD. We're going to take a look at NBA 2K24. Given that the finals start here on June 6th, this is being filmed June 4th and should go up today. But just giving everybody an idea, right now the game's on sale. I think it's less than $10. This again is June 4th, 2024. Prices will vary, and I'm sure the price will go up and down over the next few years. But right now, it's pretty cheap, and it actually runs very well on both devices. So compatibility, don't need to do anything special. We go over and check out the control layouts. It's pretty standard. They've got those already in place. The LCD is offline, and this is so I can be able to showcase this at the same time. And the OLED is the one connected right now. The interesting thing about NBA 2K24 and Madden and some of those other ones, sports games, you can allow these to kind of play themselves and showcase what the performance is going to be. So that's what we're going to do, but we're going to take a look at a couple different settings. We saw this in a previous video. It was Multiverses, where if a game is running really well and optimized well, the OLED can run it at 90 frames per second, where the LCD is at 60 frames per second. You can see that right now. When that happens, even though the chipset is far more efficient and the battery is bigger on the OLED, running at 90 frames per second will utilize more power than running at 60. So that's kind of what we see here as well. And we'll take a look at how you can affect that or adjust it. Let's see if we can just get into the game. There we go. And once we start it up, we'll be able to showcase a little bit of that. So I'm going to dismiss this one. So now we're kind of on the same screen. Again, you can see 60 and 90 just on the menu. That's not surprising. But if we go into settings, we'll take a look at those first. And we want to go down to video settings. In here, we are running at the 1280 by 800, so the 16 by 10 ratio. Both full screen, both have all the same settings except for the OLED refresh rate is 90 hertz, where the LCD is 60, so that's where we're going to be able to get extra FPS on there. Now, we'll leave vertical sync on, and for the purpose here, we're going to run it on Ultra just to showcase it at the highest level right now. So we can take a look at some of these settings. They're all set to high and ultra. It's basically the preset. There's not much we can change. We're just going to let everything as is, and then we'll jump into the game. So let's go back. It's just giving a warning about like, hey, if you were to put it at 60 hertz, you're going to have less tear. It's not going to tear while we're playing, so we're going to be fine. Taking a look at the settings of the actual machines themselves. HDR is not enabled because I don't believe the game actually supports HDR, and you can kind of see what we have set up. Now, I didn't charge these, so the battery is definitely going to be lower because of the battery's not charged up, but that's how it's going to be set up. And you can see 60 and 90 hertz is the refresh rate limit, which we don't have them limited at all. Let's just take a look at the actual game and let it play itself. So we're just going to jump into quick play, and we'll speed our way through it. There we go. And I'm not really worried about that, but we're going to let the CPU play the CPU. And then I'll just kind of speed us through the opening intro here. You can see the video does have a little bit of stuttering, and it does drop to 60 frames per second. Sometimes it goes lower when it's doing that kind of loading screen. Let's just see if we can click our way through to start of the game. I think tip-off for the actual finals this year is what, June 6th? I believe it is. Oh, it's doing some kind of video up on the top. There's always some kind of way that they present that's a little bit different for each of these. Let's hurry up and get through. There we go. Now, there we go. The game is starting up. It's running on ultra settings. You can see YouTube TV, funny enough, in the background being promoted. And if we take a look, we start to notice that on ultra settings, we're pretty comparable. We're not really too far ahead in terms of frames per second on the OLED. So we're actually seeing usage, power usage on Ultra being very similar, but it is pretty high, 27.5 watts on the LCD to get that desired like 60 frames per second, but it's still dipping into the 50s area. On the OLED, we're getting a little bit better FPS, right? It's bumping between 60 and 70, sometimes dropping a little bit below 60, but it's utilizing 22.3 watts, 22.4, somewhere in there, while it's running. So it's actually more efficient right now, as we've seen in other videos, when playing at a little bit more challenging settings. So where it's not able to get to that 90 frames per second, the OLED begins to win out because it's going to be better battery life, basically because it's going to be more efficient and it's going to have a little bit more battery in terms of the actual size of the battery. Down here, you're able to still run it though. I mean, it's really a big question, and I've said this in a couple of these videos. It's a big question of whether it's worth the upgrade to go to the OLED when you're really getting just slightly more. Now, you do get a better screen, the OLED screen itself, which here, probably in this video, you're not going to be able to see so much. HDR always shows it off better, and it just, gives it that extra benefit of having that capability. Here, though, what we're seeing is, yes, you are going to get a little bit better battery, you're going to get a little bit better performance, but overall, that LCD still provides good results. I'm always quite impressed with it. So, let's take a look at if we can change. I don't think we can change the settings from in the game as it runs. If I'm not mistaken. Right? Yeah. No, you have to back all the way out and go back in to be able to change settings. Let me just verify that to be true. Yeah, there's no settings there. And your options are only kind of like for what the game's actually doing. The presentation, the audio, stuff like that. So let's go ahead and jump out. We're going to exit, and we're going to go back in. We're going to take a look at different settings. So let's take a look here. Now, just dropping down, going from ultra down to high, you're going to see a massive difference. So let's go in here, and let's go to overall quality high. Now, that's going to have basically all the settings adjust automatically. It's a preset. So you're going to get like one medium or so in the shadowing or the shader details. But otherwise, you're dropping down to high. So the game's going to look good. There's no issue. It's going to be more efficient. That'll be the other side of it. But notice the difference between the OLED and the LCD in this, where the OLED was running better, would give you more battery life, and gave you pretty good performance results. Yes, there was a little bit of difference in terms of the FPS, but I think if you can get 60 or close to 60, 58, 59 on both, you're really in the same ballpark, so to speak. And let's go ahead and jump in to play now. We'll do the exact same thing. We're going to let the CPU kind of play against itself because it's easier. And we'll just have to speed through a little bit of this. Again, the OLED tends to do this like preview show. I don't know why. I don't know if it's something to it or not. I've seen it over and over again. The LCD never does that. Well, from my testing, I've never noticed it doing it. All right, let's get in there. Got a couple things we got to click through. Oh, we're so close. They're talking. It's loading. There we go. Almost tip off. All right. We're going to let it run kind of at this point. You'll notice now the difference is we're running at 60 pretty much all the time. It's locked essentially on high on the LCD. But we're also running at 90 pretty much the entire time, locked. And look at your watt usage. Now the LCD, 22.3 watts, it's definitely going to give you less battery time than your 14.6 to 15 to 16 down here on the LCD. The LCD is actually going to win out in this scenario. Even though it's got less battery, even though it's not as efficient, if you're running at the highest FPS, your 60 frames per second down here is going to do well. Now, you could go in. That's not to say you couldn't just go in and adjust the OLED to 60 frames per second, and that's that. Now, we should be able to do that without having to go back through the same process. You can see what the game looks at, though. It's pretty nice. On high, there's really not too much of a difference. Now, obviously, there's some difference, shader levels, things like that, but overall, it's not a real big difference. Let's go in, though, and manually adjust our FPS. I'm hoping this works on the fly. I think it does. So we're going to drop this all the way down to 60. Right there. Hopefully it doesn't crash. There we go. Now we're at 60 FPS on both. Again, still, we're seeing the wattage drop down a little bit, right? Now it's coming down to 17. Now this one's at 17. This is still going down. So we may see this go down a little bit below what the LCD is doing. So then you start to see, okay, there's a competitive advantage. See, now we're at 15. We're at 15. 17, but this one's holding at 15. This one bounces a lot more to keep that 60. So now your OLED is going to win out, right? In that sense, you're going to see that 60 frames per second give you that extra battery time that you're really desiring when you're playing this game, even at the same settings. Now you could do that in game. You don't have to do it here. We were able to just adjust it on the fly by using the built-in frame limiter. But we could also say, well, what's it going to do at 30 frames per second? A lot of people will go back and forth and say, well, I wouldn't play at 30. I'd play at 40. Fair enough, right? Let's just try getting it to 40. So that's 80 hertz refresh rate. We'll put it at 40 and let's see what it runs at. See where that battery goes. Oops, I didn't change this one. There we go. Oop. Let's put this down to 40 as well. There we go. Now, we've got both devices in that 40 hertz range, 40 FPS range, sorry. Starting to see a little bit of adjustment. Again, they're going to stay close. They're not going to be a massive difference in terms of performance, but we're below 15 most of the time in that sense. And that bigger battery, that extra power that you're going to get out of the the OLED will benefit you here. So that's kind of the overall feedback I have for the OLED versus the LCD for NBA 2K24. It's a great game. The game runs great on both devices. You're really not going to have any issues holding high at 60 frames per second on either device. And if it's me and I'm playing on a trip, I'm probably going to limit the FPS down to that 60 frames per second on the OLED to be able to get that advantage for the battery, right? You're gonna be able to play longer. At 15 watts, you could probably figure that you're going to be able to play, sub 15 watts. You're probably going to be able to play for, I'd probably guess 2.5, 3 hours. Right, in that case where maybe the LCD is going to give you 2.5 hours, something like that. So there's going to be a varying difference, but if you can get one of the OLEDs cheap enough, it's always going to benefit you if you're doing the adjustments. If you're just running at full speed, highest frame rates, everything like that, you're going to see less performance than the 60 FPS that the LCD is going to give you, just because it takes more power to run it at 90. Really your preference. Okay, that's going to end this video, folks. I appreciate everybody for stopping in, as always. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Come and vote in the daily poll every day for what you want to see on the Weekly Factor podcast, the live stream that I do every Saturday. Let everybody vote on games, and we show 5 games every Saturday that you voted on running on both the LCD, or on the OLED, sorry, and the Legion Go. Also, if you haven't, click the like button right now. It should be circling or blinking. I think it does that now if you call it out. I'd appreciate your help there, and it helps get the video visibility. And also, hey, leave your prediction on who's going to win the finals. Not 100% sure this year, but at least you know you could play it in here and make whatever team you want to win. Thanks again, folks. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.